Debbie Wasserman Schultz was on CNN, and she was asked to comment on whether or not she thought Russia influenced the outcome of the election. And her response was pretty ironic.
I want to ask you specifically, look, some of them had said they would come out and not come before Congressman Lewis, but there is no doubt that when he came out and said that Trump was not a legitimate president, that is when we started seeing people come out in scores and saying, we're not coming. He said that Trump is not a legitimate president because he says the Russians participated in helping Trump get elected. And look, they didn't just help Trump. Their hacking of the DNC cost you your job as chair of the DNC. So let me just ask you this question directly. Do you believe Trump is a legitimate president?
What I believe is that there's no question that the outcome of this election was affected by the Russian interference with the campaign, and because our intelligence community has unequivocally stated that Russia's intent was to influence the outcome of the election in favor of Donald Trump, I believe, one, that the investigation that the United States Senate is going to do into the relationship and interaction potentially between the Trump campaign and Russian officials, that's essential.
Yeah.
But I think there's no question that the outcome of this election was affected by Russian interference with the campaign. No doubt.
So let me ask you this, Debbie. Would you say that Russia influenced the election between Clinton and Trump more or less than you influenced the election between Clinton and Sanders? Because I want to reiterate what you said here. There's no question the outcome of this election was affected by Russian interference. So what you're saying, Debbie, is that Russia influenced the outcome of the election by exposing how you influenced the outcome of the election. Now, what's interesting to me is that the evidence that supposedly confirms that Russia did, in fact, hack into the emails of the DNC and John Podesta, well, that evidence is secret. It's classified. We're not allowed to see it. So even if, though, that we can prove and see the evidence and confirm beyond a shadow of a doubt that Russia did, in fact, hack into those emails, to state that that influenced the outcome of the election, don't you think that's a dubious assertion? Because you can't say that this actually did have a huge impact on the election. I would argue that Hillary Clinton did not lose because of these emails. She lost because she did not appeal to the working class. So while we can't prove, however, that Russia influenced the election, what we can prove, Debbie, is that you influenced the outcome of the Democratic Party primaries. So as it stands, you have no right to talk about interfering in elections when you literally had to step down because you interfered with an election. You hypocrite. So this is just like, I was honestly shocked. Like, Debbie continues, even though she's done really egregious things, she continues to surprise me because I don't know how low that bar is going to be lowered. But trust me, she's lowering the bar in terms of what the Democratic Party will say and do that's just incredibly hypocritical or ironic. Now, also, I don't know if you caught it, but the CNN anchor literally stated that Russia cost Debbie Wasserman Schultz her job. Excuse me? It's the actions of the person who's committing the crime that led to their punishment. So, I mean, since when is it acceptable to label a person exposed of wrongdoing as the victim? That's what you're doing. You're making Debbie Wasserman Schultz, whose guilt was exposed, you're making her into the victim. So why are you allowing Debbie Wasserman Schultz to be the victim when she's the one who victimized Bernie Sanders supporters? She defrauded Bernie Sanders supporters, hence why we're suing her currently. So it's just, I feel like everyone has lost their minds here. What I also find hilarious is that knowing that the DNC's emails contained evidence that the DNC and Debbie Wasserman Schultz did in fact tip the scales in favor of Hillary Clinton, well, she literally confronted James Comey about this. She told Comey that he should have come to her directly once the FBI was aware of the breach, just as he had done with other hacking victims. Because presumably, if Comey had notified her in advance, then she could have hid the emails, and maybe could have been shielded from public scrutiny and wouldn't have lost her job. This is a joke. Like, this is a joke. The Democratic Party should want nothing to do with Debbie Wasserman Schultz. But unfortunately, this is the norm in the Democratic Party. This level of hypocrisy, where of all people, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, I almost said Hillary Clinton, where Debbie Wasserman Schultz has the gall to complain and cry about how Russia influenced the election when she influenced an election. If you didn't influence the election yourself and rig the primary against Bernie Sanders, then what Russia did wouldn't have mattered. They wouldn't have been able to influence the election if you can in fact prove that they did influence the election or even hack into the emails, which I'd like to see the evidence before I make a conclusion, but I'm sorry, it's your fault. Hillary lost because you rigged the primaries in favor of her when she was the demonstrably weaker candidate. She lost in 2008, and we all were telling you she was going to lose again, or was in danger of losing if you don't wake up. But you decided to lose with Hillary Clinton rather than win with Bernie. It's your own fault, so don't cry to me about rigging the election. Why don't you focus on the election that you rigged and apologize for that first before you start talking about Russia, Debbie?
Support this podcast by joining the independent progressive media revolution today at humanistreport.com.